As Jean-François said, IQLab is an Argentinian artist collective that produces installations and interventions, and a company that develops interactive and multimedia products in Argentina and South America. Since 2006, its members are Natalia Pajarino, Gerardo de la Vecchia, and me. I'd like to mention some of the main impressions that guide our way of thinking and creative processes. I want to share with you in the next minutes some thoughts and images about them by addressing 3 of our projects. First, we daily face a constant influence of a second-hand reality, mediated by technology, well, you know, smart TVs, computers, smartphones, tablets, etc., and sculpted by the powerful groups, such as media, economic, and political corporations. At the same time, we are subjected to an overwhelming data. I relate data with in different levels with information and also with ideas and desires. And additionally, we think that public space or spaces for public use is increasingly controlled and restricted to and for our body displacement and for consuming processes. These insights structure our artistic production through the following questions. How our projects inserted in this context? When can we have time and space to ponder on our individual and group status? Are we responding to the overwhelming data? Can we suggest our own ideas? Which public spaces can we take for ourselves, for a sort of appropriation? Which public spaces or spaces for public use can we take on to communicate, share, and collectively build? How can we react and respond to the control and to the power? Can we exert power and control in order to keep the adequate balances? From 2006 to 2010, we presented our work Graffiti, several wall interventions in public spaces in Buenos Aires and Cusco, through writing and projection of digital graffiti. This work allows passerby make a signature or digitally drawing on the walls of a public space. Each entry made is projected in real time, giving the interactor the possibility of making a legitimate graffiti, of expressing, communicating with people, and to involving himself with the space, his space. Nowadays, artistic installations and interventions and other group actions too have the capacity to reaffirm the shared physical space as a legitimate place of collective experiences for the exchange of ideas and desires. The public space usage involves to defend the value and importance of our bodies in the voices, physical presences, and the essential wealth of our corporal and gestural communication. IQLab, too, we can say, considers the public space as a place for discovery, all kind of discovery, of things, of others, of myself. Therefore, we think the public space is a place for social and cultural development. In 2011, we developed Papeles. It was an interactive installation that proposed to the public to reflect on some of the roles assumed by the people, the revolutionary groups, and the intelligence of military dictatorships in 1970s in Argentina and Chile. The democratic government of Salvador Allende was overthrown by General Augusto Pinochet on September 1973. Thousands of Chilean residents crossed the border to Argentina in search of political asylum. In Papeles, the room walls were papered with reproductions of posters and pamphlets that showed solidarity of Argentine groups with the political exiles from Chile. Documents and identification cards used as instruments of control by the intelligence forces of Argentina were projected over the pamphlets and posters. It is important to mention that the word papeles in Spanish means both paper as well as rolls. It is possible to harness the multimedia technologies and electronic interfaces attraction. We know that large-scale projections, amplified sound, touchscreen sensors, and many other interfaces like mobile phones are extremely attractive. The combination of this electronic media with the artistic languages and strategies have an enormous potential in the promotion of collective engagement and exchange. In papeles, each person might move free around the installation. An hybrid object mimeograph photocopier allowed to make a photocopy of one hand. Then the interactor was able to paste that copy on one of the transparent panels in the room, leaving a footprint as an interposed barrier between the papers and the projection, which protected the pamphlets of identifications. To do or not to do, that's a choice. Any choice implies a stance in this case. Participating is inevitable. In 2010, the Media Lab of the Cultural Center of Spain in Buenos Aires called us to design with NGOs dedicated to combating various aspects of poverty an artistic activity which could be a change agent for facing this problem. We developed a preliminary draft about an intervention called La Fuente de los Sueños. But the proposal couldn't be materialized due to the economic crisis in Spain, because the funds to materialize it would come from the Spain state. So they said, let's fight against poverty. And Spain is a poor country. What is poverty? It could be important to consider how our proposals are inserted into the agendas imposed by powerful groups. The state, mass media, sciences, the market, academia, and other corporations. It is important to consider they impose ideas and desires. Therefore, we must consider whether we are taking a topic from the agenda of a powerful group, and in this case, if we are affirming within this agenda, the case of papeles, I think, refocusing, proposing a counter-proposal, La Fuente de los Sueños. The other possibility, we are taking a topic outside of this agenda. I think all options are valid, but we must know clearly what we are doing in each situation. I think a refocusing process from inside the powerful group agenda allows hierarchizing an idea based on its own relevance. It gives the idea a greater entity and an own gravity, opens the game, prioritizes certain topics and approaches to these topics. It tends to be freer. It's released from conditionings and constraints, and it tends to question the basis of the established. The work La Fuente de los Sueños proposed an itinerant interactive installation for public spaces consisting of two objects, a wishing cabin and a wishing fountain. I must say the word fuente in Spanish means source as well as power source, and fountain too. Therefore, the name refers to the origin of dreams, the potentiality of dreams, and how dreams are like water or liquid, which flow and blend. In the cabin, the public could write down a wish, which could be projected onto the water. From the cabin and the fountain, we intended to reflect on the wishes, such a learning experience of everyone. This exercise is not only a challenge for anyone who has not noticed his needs and desires, but also for those who believe to know them clearly. Far from being able to solve the unfairness, we decide to encourage reflection, self-acknowledgement, and the affirmation of hope and overcoming. Not prejudging an adobe house, but reflecting on the different types of poverty, wealth, and different kind of needs and necessities. In this case, the proposal on reflection action operates under an established framework which we value, so we decide to continue. However, this project could generate reflections on this agenda itself, where it's contained. It is worth mentioning that in this case, a museum dependent on the national state called us for developing a work on human rights, a very sensitive subject in our country due to the successive military dictatorships that we suffered in the 20th century until 1983. That's just a topic outside the agenda. The public space as a place of experiences and expressions is not a priority in our government agenda. Graffiti in the city express desires, opinions, individual and collective footprints that manifest identities, saying, here we are this way. In graffiti, we deal with the ban, with the prohibition, proposing a way for the space appropriation and the free communication. Avoiding punishment. I think this is important. Finally, I insist on some questions. What agenda moves us? What is the relationship between our desires and the environment? And what is our role in the public spaces? How do you express over there?